Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. These guys are trying to provoke Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, into saying something else, I don't know, or maybe just want to provoke him into, I don't know, saying some things that are not supposed to be said out loud. But they try, and they try to corner him, and they try to ask him the same questions over and over again. And Orban does not bow down, doesn't bend the knee. He tells them even more and more and more, and these guys seem to be exasperated. Now, who are these guys? The Western mass media and some weasel politicians in the West. Not all of them, some of them. So what happened? Mr. Orban was interviewed by the Bild, a German media outlet. So the Bild, or their Bild, I think it's called, not I think, I know it's called, but let me be accurate here, newspaper Bild. So I don't know if it's the German newspaper Bild. So he was interviewed, let me show you this, on the 27th, which is today, on June 27th, and Viktor Orban said a lot of things. I have 3 articles to tell you what Viktor Orban told these weasels without, any shame. The first one comes from the New Voice of Ukraine, and Viktor Orban says, "Putin not a war criminal," claims Hungary's Orban. Now you can imagine that for that would be blasphemy. You lose your jobs in the free world, in some places, I'm guessing, because you're not supposed to. I mean, you have to parrot the line. So this comes from June 27, 2023. So he's already adding in deep doo-doo. He said one notch lower would not matter. So Putin not a war criminal, claims Hungary's Orban. So Russian dictator. Now he's dictator. Tomorrow he's the president, and then the next day is the war criminal. So Russian dictator Putin is not a war criminal. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban claimed in an interview with German newspaper Bild on June 27th. Orban explained his belief, assessment, let's put it assessment, by alleging that Putin's arrest would disrupt peace talks on Russia's ongoing full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This guy is just, try to put it in real terms. And I'm quoting. So pragmatically, not, I want that, make believe or all kind of, ideological thoughts. And I'm quoting. Inviting them, the parties to the conflict, to the negotiating table and saying, "Come to the table, I'll arrest you," is not a very good idea, Orban commented. And come over to discuss with you and we'll arrest you when you show up. And I go on, again, I'm quoting Orban. It's absolutely inappropriate to talk about Putin's status as a war criminal now. Of course, let's solve the big problem and then we'll see what's happening next. In the meantime, Putin dies of, good health and old age, and that's it. You don't have to deal with that. Orban was also asked whether Putin would be arrested if he come to Hungary, to which he replied, remember, these are got you questions, and these hypotheticals. And they want to see which side you are on. And he says, smart, Orban said, there is no information that Putin wants to come to Hungary. So that means if that when or if that would to occur, we'll deal with it then. So next question. You see, listening or reading whatever exactly a guy said, you learn certain things, to avoid certain questions. Okay, that's a hypothetical, I'm not answering, I don't want to, and so on. So that's the first article about Orban's chutzpah. Let's go to the next one. Comes from European Pravda, and it's about the same interview, and it says that Tuesday the 27th, again, June. Orban says that country at war cannot be NATO member. Now this is reality. I've been parroting this for 1,000 years already. You can't even invite a country to become a NATO member if it's currently at war, which Ukraine is. I said this many times, but these guys in the media have been saying this for, I don't know, a year or more. Ukraine should be invited. Ukraine is a de facto NATO member. No, it's not. Because if it is over there, you have to go and fight Russia mano a mano, face to face. And you don't. Why? Because you don't want to fight. All right? So we have here Orban saying the obvious. He cannot, and he's going to mention the NATO status. You can't do that. If you ban that, then that means there's no laws, there's no, policies and procedures, which we know they're not if the boss wants them to be or tries to avoid them. So let's see what this guy says. Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, commenting on Ukraine's potential NATO accession, has stated, who the hell would ask this? Has stated that a country engaged in war cannot be a member of the alliance. Orban was responding to questions in an interview with the German outlet Bild about whether Hungary would block Ukraine's accession to the alliance when it is considered. Again, these guys talk about it in the future. What are you going to do? And the guy says, wait, man, that's so much. What are you going to do when you build a nuclear weapon? Psst. Let me just start building it and then we're talking. And he said, Orban says, I cannot say because it is clearly stated in the NATO treaty that those who are at war cannot be NATO members, said the Hungarian Prime Minister. Accurate, factual, real. When asked directly if Ukraine could become a NATO member after the war, Orban did not give a direct answer. He said, let us discuss it, he said. So we'll see, maybe by then, possibly Ukraine will not be a country. It's going to be something in between. It depends what the outcome would be. And Orban in the third article will say exactly how he sees things about this Ukraine deal. And the last thing here is, in the same interview, Orban claimed that Ukraine is, and I'm quoting, no longer a sovereign state, as it has become dependent on Western support, particularly to the will of the United States. No, he's just an ally. So Orban says Ukraine is no longer a sovereign state. Without the Western support, particularly the will of the United States, it's all done. Orban also stated that he considers the coup attempt by the private military company Wagner in Russia to be an unimportant event. Why? Because there was nothing that could happen unless the Russian military splintered, and it did not. And then they're going to get me to the war, which is the third article from Russia Today, again about Viktor Orban's interview with Bild, June 27th. Ukrainian victory is, quote-unquote, impossible. Orban. The nature of Western cooperation with Kiev during the conflict has been a failure, the Hungarian leader says. The idea that Western military aid would enable Ukraine to defeat Russia on the battlefield is wrong. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said this is what he thinks, and so far they're just at it. And he's going to say the same thing that I would say a pragmatic person looking at the situation, analyzing the data, will conclude. But hey, there's some interpretations, we don't know all the facts, so I understand that. But let's see what Orban says. And I'm quoting, I stand on the grounds of reality. Oh, you can't do that nowadays, you have to do something else. The reality is that the nature of cooperation between Ukraine and the West is a failure, end quote, Orban said in an interview with German tabloid Bild on Tuesday, suggesting that the weapons, funding and intelligence being provided to Kiev by the US and its EU allies would allow Ukraine to win, and I'm quoting, is a misunderstanding of the situation. That's impossible, end quote, he argued. And I'm quoting again Orban, the problem is that the Ukrainians will run out of soldiers earlier than the Russians, and this will be the deciding factor eventually, end quote, the Prime Minister said. This is exactly what I've been saying. They will be done, but I also said that they will be replaced by foreign volunteers speaking various languages, and when they get captures, they will say, well, I'm a volunteer from, I don't know, Great Britain or France or Germany, which is not impossible. But, you know, if you've been around the block a few times, you understand what could and probably happen. He rejected the interviewer's contention that all of Ukraine would have been captured by Russia without NATO aid. This is what they say. Hey, if we don't help Ukraine against the invading Russian hordes, they would go and, soak their feet in the Atlantic Ocean in Lisbon. And the guy said, this is a hypothesis to which there is no evidence. So he rejected the interview's contention. They always say that, hey, if we wouldn't help, Russia would conquer the whole Europe. And he said, this is a hypothesis to which there's no evidence, which I've been saying for some time, but hey, I'm not a president of Hungary. According to Orban, a ceasefire must be reached in the conflict between Moscow and Kiev as soon as possible, or Ukraine will, and I'm quoting, lose a huge amount of wealth and many lives, and unimaginable destruction will happen. That's why peace is the only solution at this moment. And I'm quoting again Orban. What really means is that Americans want to do, Ukraine is no longer a sovereign state. They don't have any money, they have no weapons, they can only fight because we, in the West, support them, end quote, the Hungarian leader explained. He criticized EU sanctions imposed on Moscow over the conflict, saying they failed in both, and I'm quoting, bringing Russia to its knees and in achieving peace in Ukraine. Sanctions, and I'm quoting, have not worked. I'm surprised that we turned out to be incapable of formulating them appropriately, he said. Budapest has been one of the few European Union capitals to maintain business relations with Moscow because it was, and I'm quoting, good for the Hungarian people. That's all they should care. That's why you're the Prime Minister of Hungary, not the Prime Minister of Brussels. Orban said, and I'm quoting, I'm fighting for Hungary. I don't care about Russia's President Vladimir Putin. I don't care about Russia. I take care of Hungary. Now, this is how each and every country should speak, because we're not in all this together. And hey, inclusion, diversity, and equity. Remember that one? He also commented on the failed revolt by the Wagner private military company, which occurred in Russia last week. And I'm quoting, I don't see much significance in that event. So the most important thing, which is the prospect of achieving a ceasefire in Ukraine, he stated. So that is what's important for Orban. Now, Orban scored a lot of points for me and keeps scoring, first because his intelligence, second, or the other way around, because of his courage, and so on. And he's got some good cabinet members as well. He's got a fantastic foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó. Again, listen to the foreign minister of Hungary and listen to the Romanian foreign minister. I don't even know his or her or they's names. Okay, I do not, and I don't care. Why? Because they don't have an independent foreign policy. Romania is like that. Do I like it? Obviously not. Very much not. But hey, I'm not Hungarian, and I very much, I don't care if it's a Hungarian, a Ukrainian, I don't know, an Israeli, a French, whomever. If they come and they show logic, courage, and reality, being real, that's my man. Or my woman. But usually if you say that means something else. So anyway, this is it. Orban, I think, is logical. I think he's courageous. I think he's great. And the fact that he reiterates the obvious fact that I'm here and I care for the Hungarian people, not about the Putin. He could have said the Ukrainians, but he avoided, because they would have been, oh my God, they would just taken that, crop it, edit it, and say, hey, he doesn't care about Ukrainians. But he avoided. He gave the example of Putin. But by association, you understand from whatever he said, I don't care about anybody else but the Hungarian people. And actually, he's elected by them to look for their interest, not for Brussels, Putin's, Zelensky, or whomever, Weinstein. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.